Right.
Hey Neil, so I just wanted to thank you for being here and for agreeing with sharing your experience in self-concept in this quick interview.
Yeah.
And thank you. So the first thing you'd like to ask you is, can you tell us a little bit about your background and the problems you were trying to solve when you started within the self-concept?
Yeah, so a quick bit about my background. So I was in addiction for 20 years. I'd moved on. I'd kind of put myself back through school, college, university, and everything. But I got involved with self-concept just because it's first thing I'd come across that really looked like a good, strong potential technique for working at the identity level. Because I know in my own experience and being a psychologist, everything is an extension from that. So
Yeah.
when I came across Damon's stuff on YouTube and he were mentioning model and everything, I just thought, yeah, I've got to jump on this because this deep stuff is not even really talked and spoke about much in academia. But I knew from my own experience of going through rehab, it weren't until I got down to my own identity level that things started to change for me. So that's why I jumped on self-concept as soon as I got a chance.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great. That's awesome. And I
Yeah.
remember like our first meeting like 15 months ago, and having been in the program like for 15 months and learned self-concept. What are the most significant changes you have experienced?
Right. So for myself, it's slowing down and being calmer. That's the first one. And then the second one is just feeling more relaxed and more comfortable, kind of being on camera, being authentic with people, just because, yeah, I'd always held myself back. Uh, but yeah, I'm way more comfortable with it now. It's so much better. Uh, so the slowing down, should I talk about that one first?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, because that was such a big light bulb moment for me,
Yeah,
Ismael. It really was. So yeah, there were these two conflicting parts. Part of me wanted to slow down and had wanted to slow down for the last few years because I was struggling with stress and that at the end of doing my masters. But then there was this other part of me that was like, it just wouldn't let me. It was relentless. It just kept like me going and going and going. And I was lost with it. I didn't know what was going on because I knew I needed to slow down. Yet something inside just wouldn't let it happen. It was so resistant to it. And then when we did that parts integration and we looked at positive intent to the part that wouldn't let me slow down or didn't want me to slow down, it came out that it wanted me to keep going like this because I'd become successful and it wanted me to remain successful. It didn't want me to fail at anything. It wanted me to be successful. And in being successful, that made me strong. And when I felt strong, I felt robust. When I felt robust, I felt resilient. And there were a couple of other values. I can't remember them. And then I just remember when we got to the last one and it just said to me, because I don't want you to use drugs. And I was like, what? Where's that come from? I've never thought about drugs for years.
yeah.
Uh, and then it just clicked in my head, and I just realised I was like, God, no wonder I've not been able to slow down because I've had this. I refer to it as my safeguarder, and trying to keep me safe, but obviously a bit dysfunctional its approach, pushing
Yeah.
me to limits. But yeah, and then that realization that, yeah, that is what had been driving me those last few years because I'd stopped just because it's stress, my satisfaction in things and was like dropping and stuff. And then I realized I just thought, oh my God, no wonder I've just plowed through everything because I've had this thing in my subconscious, always in safeguarding mode, that I don't ever return to using drugs. And yeah, that was such a realization that, and then we did the parts integration. And before, I think before, it was just kind of little dialogue in me, and it was like, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And it won't stop. It was like that, keep going, keep going. And then when we did that parts integration, and then I checked back in by voice, the speed of the voice had slowed, the tonality had become much softer, and it just said to me, just like this, Neil, it's okay to slow down. And I felt this, you know, you feel that shift inside, don't you? And I just felt this massive, you know, like it had been processed. And I was like, I remember, because you all get them little smiles, don't we? It's such a pleasant thing when this thing gets integrated back in. And then, yeah, just I went to bed then that night, kind of. My brain's obviously done more processing and stuff. And then I've got up the next day, and straight away, I just noticed the way I move was slower. Because, like I said earlier, before it was working in my office, rushing to make a coffee, rushing to eat my dinner, rushing in the way I eat my dinner, rushing back upstairs. But then, yeah, that day after that parts integration, I just walked slower. I just felt more present. I could actually taste my food,
Yeah,
enjoy my coffee.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
amazing. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So that were a big change. And then, yeah, and then the conscious work reinforced it by structuring other things in to support me being slower, like started doing yoga twice a week and doing like 3 hours yoga in total a week, and doing a bit of that at home as well. Yeah. And just keeping on top of my meditation and stuff. So yeah,
That's
that was
amazing.
that was so helpful. So
Yeah.
helpful.
Oh, it's so
I'm telling
important
you.
to be able to slow down, right? Like
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
we
yeah.
feel like we need to keep going and keep going and keep going, and that's not
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
successful. But you need to enjoy life as well, right? And relax and be able
You,
to slow down.
you do, but like this is like I said, one of the reasons self-concept model really piqued me interest is because, in my opinion, it's far deeper work than all CBT stuff. It really is. Do you know what I mean? Because we can talk all day long and get and change people through language and things like that. But actually, to know how to go into your database and know a good solid model that you can use then to kind of change memories and stuff, so that then memories support you rather than make you dysfunctional. Because I like to think of as little memories as behavioral templates. So it's like we were saying earlier, being able to go into his memories and change it, overlay it with a template that we want that's going to support us,
Mhm.
and then just let it go, and it be deep in a subconscious where we don't have to think about it. It's just, yeah, it's just amazing. It's so much deeper than most of therapeutic stuff.
Yeah, yeah. In being a psychologist, how did you help people with the self concept?
Oh, kind of. So there's the two guys in recovery. So they've been with me well over a year now. I think 14 months. Yeah, it's revolutionised their perspectives on themselves, because they addressed lots of the stuff. They addressed lots of emotional baggage and things in rehab while they did the 6 months program. But then we're working with me and me teaching them the model, because I've really gone in depth to teach them the model as well, so that they've got it. Do you know what I mean? And they can use it moving on in their lives. They've still got little bits and things that were hung up about behaviours and all that kind of stuff. So they've still got examples of things where they were telling themselves, I'm still not a good person, though, am I? Do you know, little things like that?
Mhm.
So yeah, we did lots of work on just uncovering positive intention behind behaviors and things, which was a real eye opener for them, because as soon as they realised they were just behaving in a way to fulfill what they value. And then they had that realization that somebody's behavior had violated that. So they've had this frustration response and then kind of maybe been a bit snappy with people. Just seeing it from that totally different light allowed them to say, because one of them even said when we worked for an example, smile curled up on his face and he just went, I'm not a bad person, am I? And I went, no, you never have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been really good. And they're both doing so well in the recovery. They're really solid in who they are because we've been doing this work at such a deep level, identity level. Because I can compare them to many other people that's still in supported housing and they're still kind of unsure about who they are. They're still hung up on things. And because they're not sure about who they are and they're really uncertain, I think it's blocking them from taking steps and trying new things because they don't know who they are. Whereas Dan and Charlie, they know who they are. They've gone after what they know will enhance them even more as people.
Mhm.
So yeah, they're like strides in front of anybody else that graduated at that same time. Both kind of, Dan's working, he's in a healthy relationship, he's got a little kid on way as well. Charlie, he's not in paid employment, but he does lots of volunteering and stuff because that's kind of where it lies for him, just because he does like sponsored sleeping with homeless, volunteers at a church. He's just got in a really healthy relationship as well. But yeah, and with Charlie, he's bipolar, like we mentioned earlier. He's so much calmer just because we've done this work in that database.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he's no longer flipping between, he's not got an even distribution of
Mhm.
positive and negative anymore. We've kind of stacked it more on positive. So he
Mhm.
still has some little blips, but he's not in them for as long.
Mhm.
And I think that's because he's got less counter examples.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. So I feel like he is even calmer. Like he was even able to help with the flips in the changes in the humor and the changes in how he is approaching
Yeah,
things.
yeah. Yeah, because he says his anxiety, he don't get it that much anymore. Whereas before he used to kind of wake up every day with anxiety and stuff. And then kind of be worrying about how he's going to be that day. Is his thoughts going to be jumping about and feeling really sporadic and chaotic and stuff? And he just says that if it, I think what did he say? He says, I feel like I finally got peace of mind
Hmm. Hmm.
and that things feel a lot quieter for him.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Good, good. Well, do you have any other important things you'd like to share?
Uh, oh, I forgot to touch on me being on camera and getting
Oh,
comfortable with all that. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah.
Uh, So yeah, another reason I came on self concept program was because I was wanting to develop my business further, which means being more present online and everything. But back then, in early day, the thought of being online, and I was like,
Mhm.
mm. Uh, and a lot of that went back to my addiction days, you know, because with stigma and I struggled with acceptance, rejection. That were a big fear block for me. And then because of that, I have done presentations and things like to hospitals, you know, working as a psychologist and everything, and they go well. But then because of this acceptance rejection thing, which were like really making me unsettled, even though I'd got them positive examples, I then overlaid like an auditory thing on it, like saying like what we're like niggling doubts. What if you fumble your words? And then I'd start seeing myself. I'd actually be transforming a positive past example into like a negative example, because it's almost like these niggling doubts were then giving me a script as to how to change that good example, because I'd start seeing it as being a bad event. But yeah, so I did lots of work around authenticity, just showing up, being me, and plugging authenticity into counter examples and things, just because that's one of my strongest qualities, of being calm and being relaxed. So yeah, done lots of work on that. Lots of kind of change, where a lot of parts integration involved in that one as well, because there were quite a lot of resistance involved. I think it's funny, isn't it? Sometimes there's only 1 or 2 bits of resistance, but then I think that, I think there were about 9 or 10 pieces of resistance in that one. So yeah, I just took my time, just did 1 each week and let it process and sink in. And yeah, and it got me to the point of stopping hiding in my office at home and then sticking a post on LinkedIn, because that's my main platform that I'm using, and just putting it straight on there that I am in recovery and I was an addict for 20 years, which I wouldn't have done that. I know I wouldn't have done that if I'd not done self-concept work. I think I'd have just stayed kind of hiding away in my own little safe bubble. And then, yeah, because I did that, I got really good reactions from people. I think people really connected with my authenticity and me showing my vulnerabilities as well. Do you know what I mean? Because we're all vulnerable, aren't we? We all struggle. Life's not easy. It does have its ups and downs. And then, yeah, just loads of professionals like connecting with me then. And then to the point where that's propelled me, I suppose, into my next stage, because a doctor in America, she wrote a book on overcoming adversity and finding your path to meaning, well-being and joy. So she started interviewing me and she's wrote a little chapter in a book. Then other people have been getting in touch with me. I've got some live interviews I've got to do. I've got some podcasts to go on and that. But I'm all right with it.
Yeah.
Whereas before I wasn't.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's just, the model is so good, just because when you're building up and you feel that strength of certainty increase, it's almost like the more your strength of certainty goes up, the more your fear comes down.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of one of the basic things what model that I found is that, yeah, the more certain we are about ourselves and our capacity and our capabilities, I think the more it diminishes that fear, which most of resistance is around kind of fear-based stuff. So yeah, so I feel really solid about me being authentic, me showing that I'm a vulnerable person, sharing my beliefs and my views and not kind of bending them to any external things. And I feel pretty rock solid about that.
Hmm.
Because if somebody doesn't like my views, doesn't like my opinions, then it's not meant to be. And it's not my loss, it's theirs, because I'm a good person.
Yeah.
We
Yeah. Oh,
all,
that. Yeah. Yeah. And that's so important, right? That's so important.
yeah,
Like that you can change such a deep level, right? Because all lies in self-concept. If you think about it, always like the beliefs that you have about yourself, how to feel about yourself,
yeah,
right? Is a self-fulfilling prophecy, basically, right? So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So that was a.
Oh,
I'm
well,
really. Oh,
can I mention one last thing? Because
yeah.
there's so many benefits I've had, I forget. Another one, when it really hit home for me, how doing this work makes us like super sensitive to feedback. So I don't know. So I remember was struggling with my stepdaughter in her teens. She was at that stage in her life where she's pushing out boundaries and everything. And then, because I was struggling with stress, we kind of get into an argument and I'd start pointing finger. And I remember raising my voice and she kind of looked a bit scared, do you know what I mean? And I kind of felt really uncomfortable about that. And then I did some work transforming that example, plugging resources in. So not changing context or anybody else, but just seeing myself changed as to how I would like to be in the future. And then that was really powerful because I remember then, I think it was the week after, she started pushing boundaries again. And as soon as I felt my frustration bubble up, I got this voice in my head that straight away said, stop, don't point your finger. And it's because we kind of worked on it, haven't we? Like created this behavioural template of how to be. So, because I could feel myself going into that natural reaction, but then it's almost like I got this little voice that said, stop, do not point your finger. So instead of going into that old behavior, because I had that sensitivity and that feedback, I just paused where I was in that moment and just took a few nice, slow, deep breaths and didn't kind of react. I just let her kind of say a thing and kind of stayed calm about it. So yeah, that was honestly, there's so many benefits from this model, and yet you have to experience it, don't you? Because every time you taught something and then you experience it, you're like, ooh.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a big one, right? Like sensitivity to feedback is so important because it makes you so much less reactive and it's so much easier to accept mistakes because
Yeah,
they're part of life and you need to learn from them instead of feel guilty about them and bad about them, right?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's what
yeah.
allows us to evolve as human beings.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But it just still amazes me how we can go into his database and change things and then leave it and let it settle into a subconscious and then it's kind of running automatically. Do you know what I mean? I think that's one of the most amazing things for me is that this stuff, once you've done it and built it in, you can kind of forget about it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
almost like we put a new motherboard in his brain, a new big circuit board that's functional and like actually, yeah, lets us act in a more functional way that supports us. And then I think it's like anything, when we're in a better place, it's a better place for everybody else, isn't it? Because we're more functionable, we're more helpful, especially at home and things as well. So it's not just benefited me at work, it generalizes so much, doesn't it, Ishmael, that it's like every context of your life changes.
yeah, it does. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Well, that's so amazing, Neil. I thank you for being vulnerable and authentic and sharing your experience with us. It is so nice. I'm so glad to hear about the transformations you have made and in your journey in the self concept.
yeah, yeah, it's been amazing. Yeah, I have to say yeah, I can easily say it's best course I've been on.
Yeah, yeah,
Just for depth of it, and then like I mentioned earlier, why they're not using this, why they're not teaching this stuff in psychology, like
yeah,
even at master's level and stuff. It's all old theories and old ways of doing things, whereas this goes straight to the root cause of everything, and it's his identity because everything's an extension of that, isn't it? So we go in and do that deep work and everything changes.
yeah. It's
Life
amazing.
becomes life becomes fresh again.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. So thank you very much, Neil. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure.